Loud and clear?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. This is, this is something new, this way of meeting people and being with people. Who's in the back there? Let's
Hey,
see.
Mary, Marla.
I'm Merle
Marla.
Marla.
And that's Sophia
Sorry.
from me.
And who's to your right, Marla?
That's Sophia.
Sophia. Good morning, Sophia.
And this is Trudy.
So here's a poem called Autumn Rain. It's by Kenneth Rexroth. 2 days ago, the sky was full of mare's tails. Yesterday, wind came, bringing low cigar-shaped clouds. At midnight, the rain began, the first fine, still rain of autumn. Before the rain, the night was warm, the sky hazy. We lay in the field and watched the glowing October stars. Vega, Deneb, Altair, High Hercules, and the crown setting. The Great Nebula, distinct through the haze. Every owl in the world called and made love, and scolded. Once in a while we would see one in the sky, cruising on wings more silent than silence itself. Low over the meadow, the air thickened, the stars grew dim and went out. The owls stopped crying in the wood. Then the rain came, falling so gently on the tent we did not notice until a slight breeze blew it on our faces. At dawn it was still raining. It cleared as we cooked breakfast. We climbed through tatters of clouds to the east ridge and walked through the dripping, sparkling fir forest. In the meadow at the summit, we ate lunch in the pale sun, ever so slightly cooler, and watched the same long autumn mare's tails and came back down the steep rocks through the smoke, through the soaking ferns. That's by Kenneth Rexroth. A beautiful poem, no? Rain and clouds and mountains, owls, silence, the warm night, the hazy sky, the great stars, the great nebula. The world is full of wonder and beauty. By the way, the Great Nebula, I believe that he's talking about is the nebula in Orion. Orion the Hunter, a great constellation that begins in August and lasts through the winter. The nebula in Orion is a great area of gas, mostly hydrogen gas, and interestingly, it is the birthplace of stars. Imagine that stars are now being born. Stars are forming as we sit here. The universe is an ongoing process. And that's pretty amazing to think about, that the universe was not just fixed from the beginning, but is an evolving, ongoing interaction, ongoing becoming. The universe began as a flash of light and heat that left in its wake hydrogen gas and some helium. You can't do very much with hydrogen and helium. You cannot make a tree out of that, or a frog, or even a rock. And yet this hydrogen gas would form the foundation for what would come later, namely the stars, which were born out of the hydrogen gas, as they are born out of hydrogen gas today. And the first stars then lit up the heavens after hundreds of millions of years of darkness. Imagine that. That's pretty amazing. So the stars were a second light that pervaded the heavens. And that light is still shining on us today. Our sun, which has been burning for about, 4.5 billion years, burns hydrogen, the original hydrogen that was formed in the Big Bang. That's pretty amazing. The hydrogen in our bodies, which is joined with oxygen to make water, which makes up most of our body's molecules, that hydrogen also comes from the initial Big Bang of the universe. So we have atoms in our body that's nearly 14 billion years old. That's something, isn't it? We're older than we think. What a thought. So the hydrogen gas was fundamental to what came later. The stars shone and brought their light throughout the universe. The universe is still growing, still expanding from that initial time. The universe, we think, spans some 40 billion light years. 40 billion light years, and some scientists think it's bigger than that. And it's still growing, still unfolding. Here on Earth, the universe has unfolded into a world of living things, a world of millions and millions of different forms, from bacteria to humans, with elephants and whales and fir trees and frogs and fish and rabbits and all sorts of living things living everywhere on the earth. Life is full of wonder if we just look around us, if we just take a moment to see it. Any questions or comments? Okay, so speaking of the first life, I have here an edition of Science Magazine, and this is from July, and this magazine featured an interesting story about pools of water in a place in Mexico, in a place called the Chihuahuan Desert. I wonder if anyone has ever been there. The Chihuahuan Desert, I haven't been there myself. The Chihuahuan Desert is located about 400 miles or so north of Mexico City. And it's mostly very barren and harsh country, but in a certain place in the desert, there are these pools these pools of water, which are yards across. There's hundreds of them, maybe 300 of them, and they're kind of salty pools, and they're home to very interesting living things such as turtles and little fish, and most interestingly is the tiny things that live in it, the bacteria, which are very strange in that they're related to very ancient bacteria. Bacteria that goes back to the beginning of life on the earth. And that's unusual. How did these bacteria get in these little pools? And how have they been surviving all this time? Well, it turns out that this area was covered by an inland sea millions of years ago. And then when the climate changed, the sea dried up, and what was left was these little pools. And so today we have these pools that host bacteria that have been around for millions and millions of years and are related to ocean bacteria. And so the scientists are studying these little life forms to understand how life has changed since these bacteria were on the earth. And so this is an ongoing study where the people are trying to preserve this area, and we can learn a lot from how these life forms, these bacteria, have survived and thrive in this very difficult environment. Any questions or comments? So the earth is full of life. Everywhere we look, we see life, and even where we are not able to see life, there is life. Even on our skin and on our chairs and in the air, there are forms of bacteria, for example, that live with us all the time, and we're fine with them. They have a kind of association with us and don't cause us any problems mostly. And there's a whole world of invisible life that is in us and around us. Inside of us, we have bacteria that help us digest our food and make vitamins. And without those bacteria, we wouldn't function very well. On our skin, we have certain bacteria. And some scientists think that those bacteria are actually helpful in keeping the skin free of things that would harm us. So not all bacteria are bad, and bacteria are part of a healthy life style. Any questions or comments? So the world is full of wonder, and the world turns and moves about the sun as it has for millions and billions of years, and we are in our orbit. And how is that possible? How is it that planets go around stars and stay in their own track for over billions of years? Isn't that pretty wonderful? Imagine if the Earth wandered out away from the sun, what would happen? Or wandered towards the sun. Um, that wouldn't be too good, right? um, Venus, which is a bit closer to the sun, is much hotter. It's 800 degrees on Venus, enough to melt lead. And that wouldn't be a very pleasant place to live in. We don't think there's any kind of life on Venus, but who knows? Maybe under the surface, deep in the soil, or under the rocks, there may be some kind of living thing. We don't know. The same is true for Mars, which is further away from the sun than we are. I think it's something like 50 million miles away, which is a considerable distance. And because of that, the average temperature on Mars is about 50 below zero. Um, so, um, the Earth just happens to be in the right place. And, they say in this world you have to be in the right place at the right time. And we are in the right place at the right time. Um, Even the moon, which is moving about the Earth, is in the right place. It influences the Earth in many, many different ways. Um, the moon, and it's extraordinary that the Earth is the only planet that has such a huge moon um, in relation to its size. The Earth is about 9,000 miles across diameter, and the moon is about 2,000 miles across, which which is a huge planetoid that um, is large enough to influence the Earth, and it influences the Earth in many good ways, such as it keeps the Earth in a more regular orbit around the sun. It holds the Earth in its orbit, and otherwise we might have more variation in climate. We might have more extremes of temperature, hotter in the summer and colder in the winter. Who knows what would happen if the Earth were a little bit more shaky in the way it goes around the sun. But the moon holds the Earth in its path. And also, what else does it do? It helps create the tides. The oceans of the world follow the moon as the moon moves about the Earth. Isn't that extraordinary that the moon is of such power that it can pull the waters of the Earth? And this means that the waters get refreshed as they move in and out of the coasts. The waters become full of oxygen and are able to create a positive environment for developing fish and aquatic life that live on the shore. And that's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? Um, who designed that? Many things in the world seem to be almost as if they were designed. And if you're of the religious bent, you would say, well, God designed it. And who knows? But we do seem to be living in a world that has a particular foundation, a particular way of um, of creating possibilities. I think I'll read another poem right now. It will give you some moments to think about what we have said here. Here is a poem by Robert Francis It's called waxwings. What are waxwings? He's talking about the bird, the waxwing, the cedar waxwing, a beautiful bird about this a little smaller than a robin, very beautifully colored bird. Sometimes they pass through Berkeley area in the fall and love to um, eat the fruit from trees and gardens, and very colorful birds. So he calls them philosophers, and he writes, four philosophers as cedar waxwings chat on a February berry bush in sun, and I am one. Such merriment and such sobriety, the small wild fruit on the tall stalk, was this not always my true style? Now here he's comparing himself to the waxwing, to this bird that is eating the small fruits and and engaging in a kind of merry behavior, a kind of um, joyful experience. So he says, such merriment and such sobriety, the small wild fruit on the tall stalk, was this not always my true style? Above an elegance of snow, beneath a silk blue sky, a brotherhood of four birds. Can you mistake us? The sun to feast and to converse, and all together. For this I have abandoned all my other lives. That's pretty wonderful, I think. The sun to feast and to converse, and all together I have abandoned all my other lives. So he is putting himself, I think, in the position of a bird. He is thinking of himself as one of these birds. He is interposing himself with the bird. Um, bridging the gap between a human and an animal, becoming one with the birds, and that is an interesting position. Um, Many native peoples feel themselves as part of the world, as part of nature, not above it, as most Europeans do, or most people in our society who feel that nature is something to be exploited. Nature is something to be used for man's benefit alone. And the native peoples who were in America for thousands of years had a different view of nature than those who came from Europe. Their view was that we are part of nature, and that nature is the great sustainer of life, and we should respect nature and understand how a bird or a fish are not different from us. What do you think? Do you think that makes sense to you? Hmm? Does that make sense? Um, let's see. Well, I might end the class here, as we only do a half hour now. Um, Maybe I'll do a little bit more. Let's see. Uh, see if I can find you another poem. Here's a very beautiful poem. I've read this many times, but I never get tired of it. It's by Rilke, German poet, and it's called Moving Ahead. Once more my deeper life goes on with more strength, as if the banks through which it flowed had widened out. Trees and stones seem more like me each day, and the paintings I see seem more seen into. With my senses, as with the birds, I climb into the windy heaven out of the oak, and in the ponds broken off from the blue sky, my feeling sinks as if standing on fishes. Raina Maria Rilke, a wonderful poem, I think. Do you like that poem? Did you like that poem? All right, we're going to end here today. I want to thank everybody for attending the class, and hopefully we're all going to go away with some new questions about ourselves and the universe and how we are part of the universe and how amazing is the universe in every moment. So I want to say I appreciate your being in class, and I thank you for your great attention and listening. Um, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see each other again next time. So take care and be well. Um, and have a great afternoon. Bye bye now.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome, my dear. Thank you.
With your smile.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you. Somebody's getting a sweater. Okay, let's see.
All right. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Always great to see you.
All right. See you
Thanks
next.
for being in class.
All right. No problem.
You be well.
All right. You too.
Thank you.